Hi, my name's Emily. I'm 10 years old, and I would never have thought that I could be afraid of my own brother. Perhaps if I knew what he was doing, everything would be different, but I'll start from the very beginning. I have a very friendly family: mom, dad, older brother, and me. We all live in our own cozy house. My brother is almost 13 years older than me. He's already quite an adult. He graduated from university and, it seems, worked as a designer. At least, that was exactly what Mom told me. I will say right away that my brother has a very unusual appearance, which sometimes frightened my friends who came to visit. Just seeing him in the corridor, some of the girls immediately hid in my room and didn't go out when my brother was at home. Ask me what's so scary about my brother, and I'll answer everything. First, Eric is very tall. I never met anyone taller than my brother in my life. He's almost 2 meters. At school, he played for the basketball team. He was even given a scholarship to study at a prestigious university if he agreed to play for them. But Eric chose a profession that he always dreamed of: an artist-designer. Eric has been a great artist since childhood. In addition to his tall stature, my brother has long curly hair, which he gathers in a ponytail at the back of his head, and a fashionable beard with a mustache. Sometimes he reminds us of Hagrid's friends in Harry Potter. Eric always wears only dark-colored clothes: jeans, numerous t-shirts with the logos of famous rock bands, heavy army boots, leather jackets. Add to this piercings in the nose, ears, and numerous tattoos on his body, metal rings on his fingers, and you get the exact image of my older brother. But the most important thing is that it always attracted the attention of girls and made my mother grumble every day. A cool, huge bike. The black and fast Harley-Davidson is my brother's pride. He personally tinkers with it in the garage, repairs it, and shows it off to his friends. So, if I didn't know that this person is my brother, then he would definitely scare me. I already jump every time I meet him in the evening in a dark corridor. But it is worth noting that for all his frightening appearance, Eric was an amazingly kind, caring, and loving brother. He always helped me with the lessons. Sometimes he took me to school or took me out of school. He protected me from bullies. I really loved Eric. I was proud of him, although I was a little afraid. And, as it turned out later, it might not have been in vain. Once I returned from school earlier than usual. The training of the support group where I was engaged was canceled, but I didn't have any other lessons. I was sure that there was no one at home, as usually at that time, both Mom, Dad, and Eric worked. However, I was mistaken when I saw my brother's heavy boots on the doorstep. Without emphasizing this, I decided to have a quick bite in the kitchen and then go to visit my girlfriend. As I said, with the whole family, we lived in a big house. My room and my parents' rooms were located on the second floor. My brother's room on the first floor, next to the kitchen and guest room. Eric often came home late, hanging out with friends in a bar. I was making sandwiches when I heard a strange scream. Rather, either a scream or a moan. It seems the voice was female. I was very surprised. Maybe it seemed to me. But the scream repeated, and now it was definitely a scream, as if a woman was screaming in pain or fear. Goosebumps ran through my body. The first thought is that someone is being killed in our house. But then I thought, nonsense. Which killer will kill in the afternoon? All crimes are committed at night. And then it dawned on me. My brother is watching a horror movie. He is still a lover of horror stories. Even sometimes I deliberately tease. Calls together to see something and then turns on another story about a serial maniac or a psycho killer. It was quiet for a long time. I exhaled, convinced myself that all my fantasy was to blame. Poured juice and began to eat the prepared sandwiches. But only one of them literally fell out of my hands when I heard another scream, more like a request for help. I didn't know what to do. Call my parents? But what if it's really just a horror movie? That'll be a laugh. My brother will call me a little shy girl for a long time, and I decided to check everything for myself. I took courage and went to Eric's room. If he really watches a horror movie, then I'll punish him. Will know how to scare me. I stood at the door when a scream came again, and it sounded so close, without any interference, as if screaming was right outside the door. And then there was still some rattle, like a small drill or a saw. I felt more and more uneasy. I jerked the handle weakly, but the door didn't give in. The room was closed. I wanted to yank harder, but here music played very loudly from the room. Something from the rock that my brother loves so much. Of course, the music immediately drowned out all extraneous noises. And if there again someone called for help, suddenly the music was turned on especially so that no one could hear screams. In my head, Eric himself came up with a saw in his hands, approaching a defenseless girl tied to a bed. Yes, it seems to me it's time to stop watching horror films. Still not understanding what was going on, I returned to the kitchen. I tried to finish my sandwich, but I didn't get a piece in my throat. Suddenly, someone is being killed there, but I'm sitting here calmly and eating? Before I could decide on the second assault on Eric's room, he appeared in the kitchen, but not alone. In the company of a pretty girl. The girl smiled, was very pleased, and chatted merrily with my brother about something. Everything I saw didn't fit in with the screams that I heard a few minutes ago. What happened after the doors closed to my brother's room? Eric was surprised to see me, but quickly stroking my head, he went out with his companion to the backyard, and after a couple of minutes I heard his Harley roar. The situation was strange. I thought for a long time whether to tell my parents about it or not, but still said nothing. I decided that at first I would once again observe. The next day, I deliberately didn't go to French class, telling the teacher that my tooth ached. As expected, my brother was at home again. This time I understood everything from the loud music, which with powerful bass made the whole house shake. I thought that this time my brother decided to be more prudent and drowned out the screams in advance. Suddenly, the last time he realized that I heard something that I shouldn't have heard, I became quiet in the kitchen and tried not to be caught. After some time, the music stopped. I froze, expecting to hear screams again, but it was quiet. Frankly, I was even slightly disappointed. I decided that everything that happened yesterday was just an accident. I crawled into the refrigerator to somehow brighten up my unjustified expectations, and suddenly I heard a scream again. Now a man was screaming, loud, clear. It seemed to me that even my heart was beating faster. I carefully went to my brother's room, listened and heard soft moans. But what is happening there? This time I didn't dare pull the door and immediately went to the kitchen. To wait, I don't know what. After half an hour, my brother appeared in the kitchen, who again was surprised that I was already at home, and with him, a guy around 18. The guy, just like yesterday's girl, smiled, but was a little tense, and held his right hand with his left hand. Something here was definitely not right. And then similar cases began to be repeated almost every day. I realized that I was behaving strangely and incorrectly, but I missed training and classes because I hurried home, hoping to find out what was going on outside the doors of my brother's room. My imagination painted different pictures. One was worse than the other. I imagined my brother as a maniac who likes to torture people and mock them. But what happened on one of the Sundays made me completely lose peace. I returned home after a school trip to the zoo. To my surprise, I didn't find my parents in the living room, but it was there that they usually spent their days off, watching various comedy or entertainment shows on TV. Eric's Harley was in the yard, so he was also at home. I went in, greeted everyone loudly, but no one answered me. This is the first thing that surprised me. My parents didn't show up either in the kitchen or in the bedroom, but where did they all go? And then I heard a scream. For several weeks now, these sounds tormented me in my dreams, and here again in reality, a female voice screamed. There was no doubt that this was again from my brother's room. But what struck me the most was that my brother allowed himself to do his terrible deeds at the moment when my parents were at home. Or do they know what he does there? But the truth was even worse. I was hiding behind a bookcase, already knowing for sure that after some time my brother would leave the company of another experimental. And suddenly, the door of my brother's room opened, and Eric and our parents came out. For some reason, Papa was very cheerful and stroking Mom's shoulder, who seemed to be about to cry. I completely ceased to understand what was happening in my family. And who should I tell about all these oddities if my parents are with Eric? Or does he torment and threaten them? I didn't stop thinking about it day or night. I slept poorly, studied disgustingly, and missed additional lessons. It all ended up coming out in the school psychologist's office. She knew that I was a smart and diligent girl, and worried about me. Since recently, I have become very distracted and nervous. Her sincere sympathy and feelings became the last straw for me. I burst into tears and told her about everything that had happened in my house over the past month. About my brother, about the terrible screams behind closed doors, that my parents know something but are silent. As I spoke, the eyes of the psychologist became larger. Immediately after our conversation, she, enlisting the support of 2 policemen, went to our house. She said she couldn't ignore the dangerous situation in my family and would certainly help. When we all went home together, we met the painfully familiar cry from Eric's room. The police, without saying a word, and only giving each other a silent sign, immediately went to my brother's room. The psychologist stayed with me, not allowing me to follow them, but I really wanted to personally see my brother for his terrible deeds. Then we heard the crack of a broken lock, a blow on the door, screams, and silence. The psychologist and I looked at each other, and after a couple of minutes, confused policemen and a very angry Eric came into the kitchen. It turned out that in my room, my brother makes tattoos. Eric apologized to the psychologist and the police and explained that tattooing is his hobby as an artist-designer. He used to do them in his own studio, but in the last month, he started repairs there and didn't want to lose customers. That is why he brought them to his home. And of course, tattooing is always painful, especially on some parts of the body, so men and women scream. Eric looked at me very disapprovingly. Of course, I felt very ashamed. In the evening, when my parents returned, Eric told them everything, and he also abused me very much. For curiosities, for fantasies, for not asking anything at first from them. It turned out that my mother dreamed of a tattoo from her youth, and when she found out that Eric had everything in the room to fulfill the dream, she immediately decided, and then Dad supported her. Everything turned out so simple, and quite far from what I imagined. And what would you think, being in my place? Would you tell everything to your parents, or were they also silent? Share your answers in the comments below this video. It'd be cool if you tell me you liked my story. Also, be sure to share topics of videos that you'd like to see.